Good evening, everyone. Welcome, friends, colleagues, and fellow printers and book lovers to the first public event of this season. Thank you for joining us on this very special evening. We have a full season of events this fall, so indulge me for a moment and let me tell you about them and hope to see you again here at the library. On October 15th, please join us for a conversation with Jimena Perez Grobet, who's a Mexican-Spanish book artist and publisher. On your way out, if you look at number 44 in the exhibition, that beautiful book was made by her. On October 16, we're hosting the official opening of the current exhibition, 70 Rare Books, Special Collections and Archives, curated by members of the Department of Rare Books and Special Collections staff. On October 24th, we are launching the Arcana Book Project. This is the result of a collaboration a collaboration between librarians and artists working with collections here in the library. So at that launch, you'll be able to hear about the event and purchase the books as well. The next event, also in October, is on the 30th, and join us for the first Friends of the Fisher lecture of this season, and that's the Chamberlain Lecture. And Val Napoleon will be speaking on indigenous legal traditions, feminism, citizenship, and governance. The next event is on November 27, and it's the Celta Lecture, also one of the Friends of the Fisher lectures. And the topic is Reclaiming Black Memory, Forging Black Possibilities. And it's a conversation with Melissa J. Nelson, Aaron Francis, Tura Cousin Wilson, and Shane Latips. So join us for that as well. And the last event of this fall is a conversation as well on December 3rd, and is celebrating 100 years of the Hyman Bookstore and Art Shop here in the city. So on behalf of my colleagues in Rare Books and Special Collections at the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library, I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the Friends of the Fisher Library, who for the last 40 years has supported our public programming and publication of our exhibition catalogs. As a friend, you can pick up a copy of the catalog after this Friday or join us at the opening on October 16th. Thanks to your support, we have the privilege to gather in this wonderful library tonight to learn about the life and works of one of the most influential printmakers and artists today. My colleague, John Shoesmith, will properly introduce our guests, Amos Paul Kennedy Jr., but I want to say a few words to express how we feel about being in your presence and sharing this space with all of you tonight. We feel inspired by your words, by your creativity and dedication to social justice and Black power and culture. We feel compelled by your work to raise our voices and protest injustice and discrimination in all their forms. We feel inspired to learn, to experiment, make mistakes, and even get messy, with the goal of challenging notions of perfection and expertise often associated with letterpress printing. Above all, we feel joy and gratitude in your presence, Amos. Thank you for your passion and for showing us that the power of printing resides in all of us. So now please join me in welcome Amos Kennedy.
Wonderful. Can everybody hear me okay? Perfect. Well, Debbie, thank you for that introduction. He did say I was going to introduce Amos. I think probably a better way for Amos to introduce himself. And I'm going to do that by teasing him out a little bit in terms of some of the questions I'm going to ask you. So in terms of this evening tonight, I'm going to take about maybe 35, 40 minutes to ask Amos some questions, and then you'll have a chance as well to ask some questions that come from this discussion. I actually first met Amos last year at the Gasborough Press Ways Goose. He was one of the guest printers. I was one of the the speakers. I was far less interesting than Amos was at that event. So
If you had a printing press, you'd have
if
been
I
as
had a printer,
interesting.
I needed a printing press. All I had was words to talk about some of my research I was doing. So, and Amos and I, we had some wonderful conversations over breakfast. We've had some wonderful conversations over the last couple of days since I picked him up at the train station yesterday. We had a nice dinner with the legendary Stan Bevington last night of Coach House Press, and it was just amazing for me to sit back and just be an audience for these two wonderful, legendary printers. I learned so much. And Amos and I have been spending the day together today. We visited OCAD University, where he got to meet some of the students in one of the print classes. And then just this afternoon, we were at the Kelly Library at the print studio there, where you got to print out a poster with the students, which I think was great fun for you.
Yes.
So as a way to introduce Amos, the one background piece I will give to you is the fact that Amos is not from, I would say, a traditional letterpress background. In fact, his degree was in mathematics and was a systems analyst at, I think, IBM?
Yes.
IBM for many, many years until he gave up the corporate world and discovered letterpress. Maybe you could talk about how you discovered letterpress printing, because obviously this was not part of your tradition growing up.
No, well, in one respect it was, because I do remember when I was about 9 or 10, my mother was the den mother for the Cub Scouts.
Okay.
And she took our troop to the local newspaper, so we got to see the local newspapers, the linotype machines, the printing presses. So it's amazing the experiences that you have, how it comes back later in life. And so I think that was, that put a spark in me, or interest, but lay dormant for so long.
Right.
But the real spark was when I took my sons to Williams. Also, I have to confess that I spent a number of years attempting to be a calligrapher.
Right.
Because I've always been fascinated with letters, writing, and books. And I had aspirations of being a calligrapher. However, that was not my strong point, because after I would finish the entire, getting down to the last sentence, I would always misspell a word and have to start over again. But I took my sons to Williamsburg, Virginia, which is a colonial reenactment historical site. And I saw a letterpress shop there, and I became intrigued by it. And when I returned to Chicago, I found a community print shop that taught letterpress. And after that, it was like falling off of a cliff, and I just haven't hit the ground yet.
Right. But it's interesting because you were living, I would think, because your parents were both academics, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken. So you were sort of living an American dream, especially for a black family in the United States, of becoming part of, a secure job in the corporate world. And I obviously that's a dream for a lot of parents for their children.
Right. I was living the ideal American dream, and especially for a black in America, because my father was rejected from many corporate jobs simply because of the color of his skin, not that he wasn't qualified.
Right.
So to see that his children were able to enter in corporate America, although he may not have openly expressed it, but he felt that, it was quite an accomplishment.
Right.
Yes.
So, I mean, was the break that quick then, in terms of saying, I need to get out of this world and get into another world?
No, it was a little slower. It took me about 3 years before I just said, enough is enough.
Right.
And because I was printing as a hobby.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't have woodworking shops in their basement. They have letterpress shops. And I was one of those people that I would print greeting cards, stationery, whatever I wanted. So it wasn't until I really felt stifled and I was just demoralized by the corporate world. And so I left and attempted to secure a career as a printer.
So what kind of training then did you have to learn the printing trade?
I took 2 courses at a place called Artist Bookworks.
Okay.
And that was basically it.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't, and because the thing about letterpress printing is that when you have set it all up and you pull a proof, and if there's a typo, it's normally taking out a letter and putting in one.
Right.
So you don't have to set it all over again.
Right.
And so, as I told the students today, life really is about experience. And the more you do something, the better you get at it. And so the 2 courses launched me, and I spent about another 6 months printing there. And then I acquired a letterpress shop that I put in my basement. And then for 3 years, I was just printing out of my basement. I'd do my parents' Christmas cards. I'd do my Christmas card. I did a couple of wedding invitations for friends.
Right.
And just printed whatever. I printed the political literature for my son's run for president of the 2nd grade class.
Okay.
And that's the only politics I ever got involved in.
Did he win?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
And I remember in the States, they do exchanging Valentine cards.
Right.
And so it was the year that Bush Sr. Desert Storm happened.
Okay.
And so for my son's card, I printed a peace symbol made out of hearts with the word peace, and that's what he sent out. That's what he gave out to his classmates.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously, what we know you for mostly today is the posters, which a lot of you, if you've come in, there's some wonderful ones on display. But you were also doing books at one point.
That is correct. I did books because that was part of, being a letterpress printer in the community that I was taught in. I did a couple of chapbooks. I remember I did a book for my father's birthday. And so those books were more gifts that I would give out to individuals. And then I was fortunate to find a special collection librarian who thought my work was worthy of being collected.
Right.
And so I continued to do a few books and give them, sell them actually, to the library. And then I found another one. And that was, oh, wait, maybe I can get by. And so I made the leap, and then I just started printing. And to my regret, I was not able to make a living, so I did what any good human being would do. I retreated to graduate school.
Right.
and earned a degree. And then I made a major mistake, and I went into academia. And I don't know about in Canada, but in the United States, academia is a business that masquerades as an educational institution. Also, it's also an athletic program. Mm-hmm. And after 3 years there, I was fortunate enough to go to Alabama. And Alabama, for those of you, because you're in Canada, Alabama is the cultural center of the United States of America. And there I was able to forge a living as a poster printer.
Right. So, I mean, did you sense then that you just gave up the books and you decided the posters would be sort of more to your aesthetic, more to your idea of what being a letterpress printer was all about?
Well, that, and also it takes a huge amount of time and energy to build an artist's book.
Right.
And so you have to have resources to see yourself through that time.
Right.
And I just didn't have it. So I took up doing posters because those would be for concerts or for lectures or for a fair. And so that was events that were happening. And also it played into, at one time in my life, I actually went to library school to become an archivist. And one of the things I learned from there was that, and this was told to me by the archivist at the university, she said, I would rather have the diary of a woman living in, living in the Midwest, right, living in Ohio, a pioneer woman, than have another letter by Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
Because I will get so much more, historians can get so much more information from that. And I realized that it is the work of the common, what we call the common people, that is missing from so many of these collections. And these are the people that make our civilization what it is. And so I wanted my posters to be a record of those events that common people in the South were engaged in that were not necessarily being studied or being kept, because posters are ephemera.
I was going to say, I mean, the history of the poster it's a great history. It's a history of social science, social history. It tells a story.
Correct.
And the letterpress is a big part of that history at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, it was the number one means of making posters until just recently.
Right.
And it's now being replaced by digital printing.
Right.
And, because it's just fast and quick.
Right.
And letterpress was fast and quick
Right.
Compared to other forms of printing.
So we should talk a little bit then in terms of, obviously, if you've come in, you've seen some of the posters. Maybe you could talk about kind of, how you create your work and how it's evolved over the years. I mean, we see the kind of the work you do now. Was your work always like this?
No, it wasn't. It's been a process of experimentation. And the real breakthrough came when I was living in Alabama, and I had 100 sheets of paper, and I had a client that wanted a poster printed, and I misspelled a word on all 100 sheets. And I didn't have any more paper. I desperately needed to be paid. So what happened was, I jokingly say I was like a good doctor. I buried my mistake. And so I printed over it a number of times where you couldn't see the misspelled word, and then I put the text on top of it.
Right.
And so that's how I got to my layering. And as I played with layering, I developed a style where many times the layers that I print first reinforce the information on top. Right. And so I want people who buy my work to have it in their house for a number of years and suddenly turn their head a certain way and see a word underneath. Right. That has always been there. Because we've all experienced that aha moment, and it is a wonderful moment. And I would like to think that, everybody is going like, oh, I never saw that. Right. That is so cool. He actually, put some thought into it.
How much does the text then determine the design and the aesthetics of what you're doing?
Well, my overall design is based upon what I like to refer to as vernacular design. Right. Because I was in the South and the people were not as visually sophisticated as, say, in New York, where you have things on angles and twisted and turned and extremely what I call creative. So my overall design is basically centered text with a hierarchy of words that really play into it. Right. And that is, so it's basically based upon, what I saw and what I knew that my public in Alabama would respond to. And I haven't really changed from then. Right.
In terms of then, one of the things we were talking about when we were on tour today at the different libraries, one of the students asked about the term artist. And because you've never really referred to yourself as an artist. You call yourself, a humble printer.
A humble Negro printer.
Humble Negro printer. And you kept saying, all I do is put ink on paper.
Yes.
So, I mean, do you shy away from the word artist, or is there something of the word artist that is, that puts people at maybe at a...
Well, I have problems with the word artist. I have serious problems with the word artist. And I realize that some people love it, and it's like, go for it. Right. But it's not for me, because many times what I see is that there is an exclusion of a large portion of the population. Right. And as I said today, and as I will constantly repeat, all humans want to beautify the environment they live in. We all do that. And that's one of the things, the essential things of art, is beautifying the environment. For the longest time, it was done because you were in a community. There was someone who, everyone may have tried to make a basket, but there were some people that were better at it. And so they became the basket makers, or they became the weavers. They did not set up to say, you know what I'm going to be? I'm going to be an artist. And not only that, I'm going to make stuff that I'm going to have to explain to people what I did. But, you know, if a person's a weaver, you don't have to explain to them that I made a blanket to keep you warm. We know that. It meets a need. And yes, it can be brought up to another level and have symbolism in it, but ultimately it's about making something for a person of your community that they can use, fulfilling a need of that community. And I like to do two examples, and one is the masks that come from Africa. Those were masks used in ceremonies.
Right.
They were not made to be put in a museum. They were made to be used. And when they were used up, they would make new ones.
Right.
And there were master mask makers, and there were people who learned. But there wasn't like, I'm a mask maker, and that's what I do, and I'm hoping that, you know, the chief from the next village over will commission me to do a mask, you know. And the other one is the G's Ben's quilts that were discovered, then discovered again, and discovered again, and then discovered again in the 2000s. But G's Bend is a community of blacks in Alabama that is, because of the river, they have to travel about 2 hours to get to the town that's on the other side of the river because there was no ferry. And so it was very isolated and very poor, and the women for generations made quilts out of the materials and scraps that they had. And when they were last discovered in the early 2000s, they ended up going to the I think the Museum of Modern Art, the Houston Museum of Art. There were several books done of their work. And when you read this, it's like, what happened was there was another book about quilters, and I was reading it, and it was talking about how it's juxtaposed and has a syncopation in it. And my mother picked it up, and she opened a page, and she said, "That's my cousin." And you know, she didn't graduate from high school,
Right.
And like that. So suddenly, this is just a woman who wanted to make quilts to keep her child warm, using the materials, but the art speak got into it.
Right.
And so now suddenly there's all this hidden meaning. And I have nothing against that if that's what you want to play.
Right.
But that's not the game I want to play. I
Right.
just want to make stuff and have fun and make people happy with the stuff I make.
I guess part of it is the reason I like the term artist is because I think what you do, posters and ephemera, all that type of thing, is never be considered art because it's mass produced. There's multiples, and I think sometimes it gets a bum rap because of that, and that's why I think I like to put the idea of art on some of those objects where before it carries a little bit more weight maybe.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, it does, but it shouldn't, because I am willing to wager that at least 40% of the books in your special collection were mass-produced books. It's
Right.
just that you have the last copy
Right.
of it, and so that's what happened. It became, but then there are those books that were specifically made to be in your collection.
Right.
Now, I consider that art, but the fact that somebody comes to you and says, "I was cleaning out my grandmother's, closet, and I came across this old book. Do you want it?" And you look and say, "Oh my God, that's the first edition of what was printed in Canada."
Right.
And like they may have it in a brown paper bag, and you're like, "Oh, wait, don't touch it anymore."
Right.
So, but the printer, the publisher, did not say, "You know what? In 2025, I want this book to be in the special collections
Right.
of the Fisher."
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, I'm curious about, a typical day in your print shop. and how you come up with the ideas of what to put on your posters. Obviously you read quite a
Yes.
bit, because you can just tell by the posters you're creating. You're using a lot of, they're word heavy. So maybe just talk about kind of a typical day in your print shop.
Well, my typical day starts about 7 o'clock, and I get up and I have a cup of coffee and a piece of toast. And then I do what nobody really wants to do, and that's administrative overhead, answering emails, making orders, and things like that. And it's part of being in my shop, and so I consider that, although it's in my living room where my computer is. And then about between 11 and 12, I actually go to the shop, and then I'm there. Many people think that, oh, yeah, I print all the time. But with letterpress printing, you have to put everything away after you print it. And that takes as much time as setting everything up. So I go, depending on, most of the time what will happen is that I will get an idea to print a series of posters. And so I have a stack of paper about this high with multiple backgrounds. And I'd say I have 1,000. I said, well, I'm going to do a series of 10 posters on a subject, and let's just say books. And so over the course of that week, if it starts on a Monday, I'll set all the type, I proof it, and once it's all done, then I will start to print all the backgrounds. And so I spend most of my days printing. It's between setting type, printing, and putting away type. That's how I spend most of my days. Right now, I am devoting a portion of my time to getting my archives together, because I would like to have things in something that resembles order in case somebody comes along and says, where's your archives?
Right.
As opposed to, well, it's all over here, and then,
Right.
then they have to spend like 4 weeks, gathering it together. So basically, I do that. And what I do is sometimes I have a commission. And if I have a commission, that's normally a 2-day job. And I start from a blank sheet of paper with a background. And then I make various backgrounds depending on who the commission is from. The last commission I did was for a museum in Indiana. So the date that the museum was founded, the founder, the motto of the museum, the town it's in, what their collections. So those would be various layers. And so I set those layers, and then once those layers are set, then I begin to print. And so I print the first layer, then I print the second layer, then I print the third layer, and then I print the text in black.
Right.
And I do not necessarily let the ink dry, because many printers are like, I'll print, let it dry, and I print the next. I print wet on wet because it gives you a different effect than letting it dry, because the viscosity of the inks can affect the way that the second layer lays on top of the first, or what the second layer does to the first. And I like the spontaneity. I like the discovery that happens. So I print all them, and then I print the black. And then the next day, I just spend the better part of that day putting all the type away, because it's 5 layers of type.
Actually, it's a good segue then to talking about this idea of imperfect printing, or bad printing, as you sometimes refer to it. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the school of bad printing.
Well, the school of bad printing started, well, to begin with, the woman who taught me how to print made the comment one day, oh, there's a poet that you should print a broadside for, one of his poetries, that he's really a messy poet, and you're a messy printer. And I took that as a badge of honor, because she remembered me, You're so bad that someone remembers you is a really good thing. And then I started making these layers, and I have a dear friend, Andrew Steves, over in Nova Scotia. And one day I was on Instagram, and he had put up the hashtag, Amos Kennedy School of Bad Printing. And I liked it, but I didn't like my name on
Right.
it, you know. You can say I'm a bad printer, but don't, like Amos Kennedy, let's
Don't
like,
associate me necessarily, right.
So I dropped the Amos Kennedy and I started a school of bad printing. And we have chapters in the Netherlands, Australia, and Argentina, and Canada, kinda, sorta. But you Canadians are really clean with your printing. As a matter of fact, Andrew tries to do bad printing.
And he can't.
Yeah, you know, he's like, look at this bad printing, Amos. I'm like, okay, Andrew, good job. But he's a wonderful printer, and he has really I don't know, but some of his work, especially when he's working with wood type,
Right.
you know, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that if you work with wood type, there are going to be similarities from no matter who you are.
Right.
But it's just the idea that I tell people it's much easier to be inconsistent than consistent.
Right.
And so I like the inconsistency of the printing and I print almost in the moment and with great speed, and that's what I like. And I think that's people who do this, they just like the wonder. Although I'm printing the same thing, it changes because the ink changes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes I will move type around on the form in the middle of a run.
Right.
And why do I do that? Because I can. You know, it's my press.
Right.
I can do whatever I want.
Well, you were talking about that with the students today that, you said to them, don't ask me if I'm doing this right because I don't know.
Right.
Maybe you are doing it right because I don't know. So, and that's a good message, I think, especially when you're teaching students that are learning letterpress or really sort of any sort of artistic thing is that just try it.
Right. And I think that the way that education, especially and maybe in the arts, played out is that we look to the teacher for all that is correct. Right. And when you're a young child, you don't realize that adults don't know everything. And so they know what they know. And sometimes if you confront them with a different way, they'll just blow you off.
Right.
But that's not right. What you're supposed to, I don't know. Why don't we see? Why don't we look to see what will happen? Because I believe that in order to teach, you must learn. In order to learn, you must teach.
Obviously, your work is very political. And actually, one of the posters you have is all arts are political. All artists are political. We obviously live in very fraught times now. Has your attitude about some of the words you're printing changing? Is it becoming more polemic? Is it becoming more angry? I'm just wondering how the current times are changing some of the work that you're doing.
I don't think my work is really being changed by the time, because many of the injustices that we are experiencing now have always been there, but it has not been affecting everyone. It is true injustice is something that happens to you.
Right.
It's not something that you witness happening to someone else. You can be sympathetic, but when that happens to you, then it changes everything. I remember I was seeing a movie called The Night of the Quarter Moon, and in it, it's a story of interracial marriage, and the mother of the man who married this woman who was 1/8 black from someplace off in Central America or in the Caribbean was supposedly a very liberal and open-minded person.
Right.
But she was violently opposed to her son being married to this woman. And when asked, she said, yeah, I'm all for it until it gets personal.
Right.
And so that suddenly changed her position on equality of the races. And I have always, and I may have said this to the class today, I have always identified with the people who are most oppressed, because those are the most vulnerable, the weakest. And if somebody does not stand for them, who is going to stand for me? And if I am willing to allow them to be abused, then I know someone out there will allow me to be abused. And I think many of us forget that we are all interconnected. We say it a lot, but whatever you do affects everything there is. And again, just like my mother took us to see the newspaper shop, that little experience, that 1 hour experience, may have been what changed me and allowed me to become a printer. You do not know the impact of actions you take today, but you should make sure that those are positive actions that will bring about a positive change. Someone once said, you never know when you're making a memory, so always make a good memory. You know, and so it is that what am I doing today, will it have a positive impact upon people?
I was going to ask that, actually. I was just thinking that as you're talking about, what role do you think your posters play in terms of keeping the conversations alive about social justice and inequality?
Well, I think it plays an important role, but most importantly, I would like to think, and I do think, that when I make a poster, it is infused with the joy that I experience making a poster. Right. And on some level, the person who takes that poster home feels that joy. Right. And so it is about joy and happiness that I want to have spread. I want people to be excited because, I really like this. I would rather give a poster away to a kid who's excited about it than sell it to an adult, although they have the money.
Right.
Because there is something about making people happy that should be the highest form within our humanness, like to make someone happy. Because we all enjoy happiness. We all crave it. When we experience it, we want to experience with our entire body. And so that's what I think I do more so, is that the happiness. And I really do get giddy when I print. And I hope that people walk away with that, a little bit in that poster, and it fills their house. It becomes a place where it makes them smile.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any area that is off limits, or an area that you don't want to explore in terms of some of the messaging on the posters?
Well, I will not explore, or at least I will not support the oppression of someone, or some people. So in that respect, no. As a matter of fact, things that may be considered off limits by a large section of society, I rush to find myself there. Because I tell people sometimes I like to poke the bear, and I love to do that, and so I do it.
Right.
The city of Detroit fined me because I had peeling paint on a window that I covered up, and it wasn't really peeling. And that's another whole story. So I painted, and these are 6 big windows, really big windows on my building, and I painted them in the trans colors, and then they haven't fined me since. And no one has done any graffiti on them. But, people know when they pass by the street, that's where Amos is. Because I have no windows on my shop, it's just these boarded up windows.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think of the future of the letterpress is? Because obviously it kind of fell out of favor for a while, but we see just in terms of the students we were meeting today that, they are keen letterpress printers. I mean, what future does it have?
Well, I'm getting older, and the older you get, the more conservative you get. And so I'm getting to the point where I think that in education, we need to return to physical activities. Children, children, adults, young adults, high school, college, they need to have more physical things because you learn with your body. You don't learn with your mind. Right. You learn with your body. And so I am excited that letterpress printing is returning on the academic level. But an interesting thing is that 40, 50 years ago, if you wanted to learn letterpress, you did it in what was known as junior high and then high school. Now you have to be in graduate school. So that says a lot about it. But then it also says that we do not have like shop classes. We don't have home ec, at least in the States, for students to take to learn skills. And it's like, well, I don't want to cook. Well, that's okay. You want to eat. So you need to learn how to cook, and you need to have that. I think that there will be institutions that see the value in this letterpress printing as a part of the university. And if they are really invested in it, then they will start to bring in scholars.
Right.
Because not just letterpress, but all the graphic design is underrepresented in the disciplines, especially, say, art history. So that needs to be, it needs to be bolstered. And if you have letterpress printing, that's one way of doing it. And there's an old axiom that when a printing technique is no longer commercially viable, it becomes art.
Right.
And so this is one of the things that is happening, because that probably the minimum price you can get a letterpress printed book, if it's not from Andrew Steves, is like $200-300.
Right. Yep.
And that, because the cost of it
Takes
is
time.
yeah.
Yep.
But it should not be that. It
Right.
should be something that's affordable to anyone.
Right.
But I'm hoping that that what will happen is that there will be some universities that say, yeah, we are going to invest our future and our reputation by having an outstanding letterpress program.
And I think the other part of it too, is we were chatting at OCAD, was that how do you bring it out of the institutions at the same time and bringing it into the community? Because there's still a barrier, the fact that these letterpresses are in universities or in institutions of higher learning. So how do you is there a way to bring it out into the community?
Well, I think the way to do it is bring the university out of the university into the community. It is that old town and gown sort of scenario is yesterday. In order for these institutions in the States, I don't know about here, but the standing joke is the University of XYZ is the educational component of the football team. Because the football team, for example, there was one university in the 2000s, 1999 exactly, when the football team won a game, and they didn't win games that frequently, the donations to the university went up by $1 million. In the States, people will give money to the football team before they give it to the department they got their degree from that allowed them to make the money. And so this sort of environment in the States has to end. Universities were meant to serve the community. The community was not meant to be ostracized or excluded. And maybe letterpress printing may be a way of doing that, because several of the people I know that taught letterpress printing at universities made a conscious effort to go out to the community and make things for them that they could use, and teach kids, give kids the experience of printing.
Well, because you were saying today, kids love seeing something come off the press.
Absolutely.
And they've got it in their hand. This is something I created.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to open it up to questions. David, I think, has a microphone. One last question, though. Let's talk about the denim and the pink shirt.
The denim and the pink shirt.
Yeah, so that's the Amos Kennedy uniform.
Yes. Well, I've always liked pink and denim. At least I've always been able to wear it. But in 2007, a documentary was made called Proceed and Be Bold that was about what I do. And in it, they interviewed my beloved mother, and she sat there, and just as cool as a cucumber. You know, his latest thing is pink shirts and overalls. If he wants to wear that, that's okay with me. And I really hadn't worn it. I've worn bib overalls, but not that. Occasionally I would wear that.
Right.
And I said, okay, I'll double down on you. And so now all I wear is pink shirts and overalls. And as a side note, I did an interview with middle school, and one of the students asked, why do you wear pink shirts and overalls? And without thinking, I said, because I can't go around naked, But we all have to wear clothes.
Right.
And in some respects, when I was in corporate America at the time, it was a navy blue suit, a white shirt, and a tie that you wore. I don't care what you did, you had to wear, you couldn't wear a sports coat. You had to wear a suit. So I wore a uniform there. There is this rumor, I don't know if it's true, but all artists wear black. Like, oh, there's the artists over there, they all in black. And if they're not artists, they're architects. So there are, these uniforms exist. But when you take up one and people are like, oh my God, why do you wear that all the time? It's like, it's easy to figure out what you're going to wear in the morning.
Right.
You just get up.
And easy to pack.
Yeah, easy to pack because they're like, okay, I need 3 pink shirts, 3 pair of bib overalls, boom, 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 boom. And and if you don't do that, then suddenly like, well, I may take this pair of slacks to wear for dinner tonight, at night, and take this for this and this for this, and you may end up with like 4 or 5 shirts and 4 pairs of slacks for a 2-day trip.
Right.
But no, this is it. And how do people know if I change clothes? But I do. Let me assure you, I do.
Anybody have any questions?
Thanks very much for your great talk. Could you say something about your equipment? I'm curious about the press that you use, or do you have more than one? And also your type. Do you use a lot of wooden type, metal type, and where do you get it?
Well, my equipment. What can I say about my equipment? I, at the present time, have about 13 printing presses. Yeah. So all you who want a printing press, I'm the reason why you don't have one. However, but basically I use primarily flatbed cylinder presses like a Vandercook to print my posters on because it will print big. But I have a Heidelberg 10x15 platen that I print my little small 6x8 cards. And then I have a couple of very large Italian presses that I can print a full parent sheet, which is like about 28 by 40. And yeah. And then my type, I have primarily wood type, and I would just like to say I have a very good collection, but I don't have enough. So if you happen to have a few cases of wood type, we can talk. But
Because you collect orphan type.
Yeah, I collect orphan type. I collect any wood type there is. And so I have a good collection of wood type. But at one time, I had the aspirations of opening not a community center, but allowing people to come. And I do this. I allow people to come print in my shop. Because if someone asks me if they can come print, I will tell them yes. Because I don't want them to walk away and say, I could have been if that grumpy old man had just said yes. So come. If you like it, come back. If you don't like it, that's okay because you experienced it and you made a conscious decision that you didn't want to do it. I didn't deny you the opportunity. And so that's one reason why I have a lot. I have, how many presses do I have? I'm getting rid of some, so I have like about 10 presses. Yeah, and most of them are Vandercooks. Vandercook-like presses because they're easy to use. It's hard for a person to hurt themselves on it. And you can print big. Oh, no, you'd be amazed at how you get the right people in there and they can hurt themselves on a chair, How did you do that? Yeah.
very enjoyable listening to you so far. But one question about how you design things. It sounds like you sort of design at the press rather than taking a sheet of paper and sketching out a design.
And that
how
is,
do you do it?
I design at the press. One time a person asked me, how do you design a poster, Amos? And I had a sheet of paper and drew a rectangle, and I said, I put ink there. And it is basically at the press. It's in the moment. I do not do sketches. I do not do, mock-ups. I know none of the applications that a graphic designer has. And it would be beneficial because then I could play without having to, put back the type and find new type. But no, I just like doing it in the moment. And that spontaneity brings something to it. And also, the more I do it, the better I get at it. So it becomes a second nature almost. So yeah, it's in the moment.
Yeah, we got to see it today at the Kelly Library, where a studio you have never been inside,
Right.
Type you didn't know, and all of a sudden, within an hour and a half, you had a poster.
Yep. Yeah. Well, with the help of the
To
students.
help the students, of course. Yep.
Yeah, and then we did something that I've never done before because they have a hand press. And with a hand press, the pressure comes from the top. So we put a sheet of paper in the press bed, we inked up the type, and then we turned it upside down and printed. So that means that we could get a registration that you can't, that you really can't get unless you're really spot on at it. And so I think the students enjoyed that freedom.
Other questions?
Thank you, Amos, for this conversation. I'll say I was one of the students there today who got to put the type upside down on the press, and it was, mind-blowing to just see, just thinking in the moment, thinking with the machine, and just making things with the machine just as we were doing. So that was a lot of fun to do. But my question is, the title of your book, and I know you've used this term sometimes around as well, a citizen printer. What does that mean to you? If you could elaborate on that.
Well, in the United States, I think many people forget that they are first a citizen. And citizenship requires responsibilities. And one of the responsibilities is that you show up for meetings, you show up to vote, you show up when maybe the general public isn't there. And so it is a dedication to the continuation of the community. It is that individual not living off of the benefits of society without contributing to that. As a side note, because this has been an ongoing thing, when I first started printing, you always name a press. So because that's the cool thing, you get a press name. And my press name was Idiot Press. And people said, why did you name it Idiot Press? And that's because I read the novel The Idiot, and I'm like, why did Dostoevsky name a novel The Idiot? And so I did what any good person would do. I went to the dictionary, because there was no Google. And I went to the Oxford Dictionary. And it turns out that idiot comes from a Greek word meaning private. And in Athens, an idiot was a private citizen, a citizen that did not engage in the politics, in the running of the government. And so I said, oh, that's clever, private press, idiot press. How brilliant am I? Not as brilliant as I thought I was. Because I get the author always confused. Lewis Hyde, who did The Gift, I think, he does a chapter on the idiot. And he was saying that an idiot was actually that individual who took from society and didn't give anything back. And because he talked about a gift society, he said they are basically living off of it. And so this idea of citizenship has been going ever since I started printing. But one of the people that influenced me most, although I never met him, was an architect named Sambo Mockbee. And Sambo Mockbee was in Alabama, and he was associated with Auburn University, which is a very large university in Alabama, and they have an architectural program. And with the help of another professor there, he started a program called the Rural Studio. And he would take fifth-year architecture students, move them 150 miles from Auburn in a place that did not have housing for the students, so they had to figure out how to live. And then he would assign the students, build a house, build a building for this community. And oh, by the way, you have to find the money to do it too. So he felt that architecture needed to be something more than this building for the wealthy. As a matter of fact, one of his quotes was, "Everyone deserves a place that is dry, warm, and safe." And that was a person who really revolutionized a part of architecture. And one of his students referred to him as Citizen Architect, and actually did a documentary called Citizen Architect. And so I like that. I admire him, and so I kind of appropriated citizen from that. Because, again, I'm a printer who wants to work with my community, or wants to express what I want my community to be.
Has moving to Michigan changed? I mean, because you were living in Alabama, you've been living in Michigan now for a number of years. Has, going from the Deep South up to Detroit, has that changed kind of your idea of community?
No, I think it's just reinforced it. The community is a universal thing. It is about accepting people where they are. It's about, for me, it's about moving forward, improving incrementally the environment in which you live. So no, it hasn't really changed that much. Mm-hmm. And moving to Detroit was, it is very interesting because for those of you who haven't been to Detroit recently, the neighborhood that I live in, which is about 3 miles from the city hall, the building of power, I can stand at the intersection of 2 streets, and there are not 10 buildings on those 4 blocks. That's how vacant it is. We have pheasants in our neighborhood, coyotes, deer, opossums, raccoons. It's like living in the woods in some respect. But I think that the people who are there understand community and neighborhood a lot better than the folk who are living out in the suburbs. Because there's a saying that a poor family will find enough food for one more plate if a stranger stops in, while some rich families will never find that plate. Because we recognize that we're kind of in it together and we have to help. How many of you came from a family with like 6 or 7 people in it? If a schoolmate showed up, everybody got a little less, but everybody ate. It wasn't like, no, we'll send Johnny home so we can eat dinner. It's like, no, come, you're going to eat dinner with us.
Thank you so much, Amos, for just a joyful, wonderful day. I wanted to ask you about one of the things I really like to do with students when we're typesetting quotations is to think about how we read differently when we set the type and how we kind of think about the quote and like live with the words a little bit longer and just kind of, appreciate them. And so I wanted to just ask you about your reading and how letterpress printing, especially quotations, kind of feeds into your own reading experience.
Well, I can tell you that I have a great love of proverbs, maxims, and aphorisms. I believe these little snippets have so much wisdom in them. And you can find a proverb or aphorism for every occurrence that you may come across in your life. And not only that, everyone has one that negates it. So it becomes a judgment thing. And so that is what, and they are short also. So they're well suited for a poster. And so I love to do those more so than long text. And also right now, I think people's attention spans are not that long. And so I really love to do those. So that's where my reading really comes from. And looking, when I'm reading a novel or an essay, looking for that 10 words that I can pull out that I feel will reflect something that I believe in. Yeah, so that's basically the way that I go about doing it. And I met a printer who did a newspaper about every 2 months, and he did not have copy. He wrote the newspaper as he set the type, which is a very interesting exercise. No, handset. Yes. Yes, that's why the newspaper was only every 2 months. You know, and when you think about it, you know, that even pushes the boundary over, I've written this, now let me set it. So when I first started printing, I tried to do a couple of chapbooks, and this is why I do not do chapbooks. So I was notorious for misspelling words. So I set the entire chapbook. I gave the proof to the poet to read. About a week later, she came back, and there were red marks, words inserted, all sorts of things. I'm like, I did a horrible job. You know, and I said, you know, I did a horrible job. Look at all this. And she said, well, I rewrote the poems. And at that point, I said, I will only print for dead poets. You know, because, I mean, again, when she saw it and she read it, you know, the proof, suddenly a whole series of thoughts came to her head. You know, she edited it effectively. And so, yeah, so there is something about the time and the effort to set type by hand that everyone needs to, I think everyone needs to experience. But you need to do it with like maybe 48-point type because 10-point, 12-point type is very frustrating. And that's one reason why I advocate people should start with big type and go to small. Because one, you can't put that many words on the page. And if you're using type that is, you know, 5 inches high, and there are 3 letters, if you drop it, you can see it on the floor and pick it up real quick. But if it's 12-point type, where did it go? And you're down on the floor looking for these little slivers of metal. So yeah, it does have an effect. And I think that not only that, but the actual act of printing with a cylinder press will change the way that you work, and it does affect your body, and you become more in tune with it.
Can you talk about your approach to color?
Oh, my approach to color. Whoa. How much time do you have? Number one, the only colors in my shop are red, yellow, blue, black, white, gold, and silver. That's it. Now, red can go from a pale pink to a blood red to a maroon. It's red. You know, orange, that's either yellow or red, depending how much I mix. So I don't do Pantones. I change color without cleaning the press. I will go from a dark blue to a light blue and a yellow without cleaning the press. And I get something in between, so I don't know. It is all random. And I love the randomness of it, because sometimes the colors hit so sweet that it is unbelievable. And other times it's like, how could I even have done that? But to me, they are all valid because it's just part of the process. It's part of my learning. And so I don't try to get the same red every time. I try to get the variations because we live in a world where the thing that we have in common is that we're different. Our differences make us common. And the leaves, they all are different, but they all are common. They're all the same. When you look at a tree, all these things are a little bit different, a little bit unique. But then if I'm unique and you're unique, then we both share in common uniqueness.
Thank you for this amazing evening. This is definitely taking a lot away from it. I wanted to ask, because you mentioned the short attention spans of people and also being on Instagram. And I was just wondering, as someone who's been in this business for a while now, do you feel that social media has changed the way that you approach printmaking, or has sort of influence on either the way that you approach your work, or also how you connect with other members of the community, or is that more or less not the case? I was just curious about that.
Okay. To begin with, I don't believe in social media.
Good.
I call it digital media because in social, it's about people interacting with people. That's what it is to me. This is a digital media that is mediated by someone else because they can kick you off of it whenever you want. You know, not the people that are following you or the people that you're following, but someone else. In a social environment, we may kick you out, but you know everybody who kicked you out. And you know why. You know, it wasn't like a third party who did it. So that's my rant about that. And yeah, I think that the digital media, well, there is a book out called Shitification that, which talk, you know, it says, oh, there's this new thing where digital apps come up and then they have all this promise, but over time they degrade to something that's horrible. The users are trapped in it. But this has been going on ever since anything was made. We used to make really good stoves, and now, you know, a stove will last you like 4 years and you have to get a new one. But I think that it is a shame because the digital media that I use the most is Instagram. And the reason why I went there was that I heard a craftsperson say, yeah, I'm on Instagram, and whenever I finish a project, I put it up. And the people who follow me see it, and they connect with it in a way because this phone is in their hand, and they see it, and they really like that. And so I was like, okay, I'll try that. And the first couple of years, it was great, but now it is degraded, and it's, you know, you get stuck, and you see things that you don't want to see. You know, and the things you want to see, you don't see. You know, they will suggest people for you to follow, but they won't let you follow the people that you want. And it's like, you know, and so I post every now and then, but most of the time my post is just an image because, okay, here's what I'm printing. And I don't post to say sell stuff. And I think that frustrates some people. But, you know, it's like, hey, you know, I don't want to sell my work over the internet. I would prefer to have a store and this is what I write back. Is there a store in your town that you think would carry my work? because I would rather for you to go there, pay your taxes, buy my poster, than, do it over the internet with Venmo or PayPal getting 3% of the transaction that will not go to your town, to your library, to your fire, to your police, to all the public utilities that your taxes pay for. And so, yeah, I use it and I follow people on it because there's good things on it, but there are becoming more bad things on it. And there is this whole thing where, and I guess it may be true, that let me put things up that anger you and I will get you there longer and I will have you scroll through, 15-minute rants against something, and rather than have you read an article and think about what it says and make a decision.
I'd say Andrew Steves has a pretty good Instagram, though. At least, especially when building his new press right now and seeing the progress of his printing studio. So.
Yeah. Andrew Steves is a remarkable human being. Right. That's all there is to it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but he does use Instagram really well, and there are times that he will put up tips on how he prints.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what you want. You want to have a conversation like, how did you do this? And like, here's, just go here and look at it. As a matter of fact, I am thinking about going more to email and also actually just going back to the physical post. One of the ways that people find out what I'm doing is I have a subscription service, and every month I send out a little 6x8 card. And, and I regret that I can't handwrite all the addresses, but people don't mind that, because they know that it's not a bill, it's not a terrible advertisement, and they're like, what's in it? And sometimes the quote of the proverb that I print that hits right on target where they are at that day. And a lot of times I see posting, like, I needed this today. I'm so glad that Amos's little magic envelope came today. And that is like a really good feeling.
We get excited here when your envelope shows up.
Yeah, yeah, And so what happens is that I send out more envelopes than I have subscribers, so the subscribers are actually subsidizing a lot of people. But they don't mind, it's like, hey, I got mine and I'm helping someone else.
Hi, Amos. As other people mentioned, it has been a joy listening to you tonight. One thing I really like throughout your talk, you're talking about the experience of common people, the vernacular, how important that is. And so I guess I wanted to ask you, when including the story of like the basket weavers, how you kind of fall into that. It's not something you seek out. So the people who right now are in printmaking, working with typography or words in general, is there any sense of responsibility that they might have in getting their own message across, not just in service of other people's or paid work, but their own? So, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that if you're good at getting someone else's word across and you're not getting your own word across, that probably isn't where you want to be. But you're comfortable with the living you make. You're comfortable with the challenges you're getting from it. But your work should reflect your life. And so if you're not making a statement, and it doesn't, social justice and politics. And sometimes that can, like the statement could be as simple as visit your local library. Or, like a card with a question, where's your library card? You know, if you believe in libraries, if you believe in that community service, and if you're not using it for the betterment of the community. Now, you could argue, well, I'm using it for the betterment of the community because I'm getting paid and I can afford my own house, my own apartment, and so I'm not a burden on the community as being unhoused or looking for. Yeah, but that is kind of like, yeah, that's true. But you can also, because you're in that place of comfort, what are you doing to better? And again, if you're a graphic designer, are you just saying, well, there's a soup kitchen down the way. I'm going to go see if they want me to design some posters for them or a flyer for them. You know, because it's giving back. The way you make a better community is by contributing to it. And it's not just, again, you pay your taxes, but that's not enough. That's almost like being the idiot in Athens. That's the bare minimum. What are you going to go to the meeting? Are you going to, I believe that the tax for the library should be increased. Are you going to work with the politician that's their platform? Are you going to contribute something? Are you going to take, an hour a week to say, I'm going to go to the library board meeting? And you're like, well, I don't have the time. Once you start doing it, you have the time. We think that we're busy, but when you carve out the time, you can do it. But they want us to think that we're so busy that we don't have the time. But yet, in the United States, people will spend 4 hours watching a football game that consists of 4 15-minute quarters and a 15-minute halftime. Yeah. Most of what they watch are advertisements. The average football play is less than 20 seconds. But yet, I don't have time to go to a school board meeting. And when you go, even if you don't speak, your presence is felt by the people who are there. Like, who is that strange person who shows up in the back and never says anything? What are they up to, What are they going back, are they going back and talk to other people about this? Yeah. So if this is what you do for your living, then you should, it's like, this is what you do best. And this is what I tell people. I am not a leader, but if you need something printed, come to me, because that's my talent, and I want to use the talent I have best. Now, you can make me the leader, but I'm a horrible leader. But I'm a good printer.
You know your strengths.
Yes.
Any additional questions? Yep. You want to talk about Citizen Printer?
This is Citizen Printer. It is, this was printed about last year, came out last year about this time. It is it's a book about my work. And it is done by Letterform Archive, which is a archive devoted to printed matter in San Francisco. And they have taken up the challenge of publishing books about graphic design. And at some point before the pandemic, they came across my work and they purchased a huge batch of it. And then they got it in their head that I would be I'd be a good subject for a book. And I'm like, I haven't done anything. Because again, like people, a huge volume of, I'm just a guy down over in Detroit, just skipping down the street, printing when I want to, not printing when I want to. So I'm not a good role model, but they said that they wanted to do it. Now, I'm the kind of person, well, you want to do it, I don't have to do much. So, okay. It's your, it's your nickel. If you think you can sell enough copies to recoup your money, go, feel free. And they thought that, and so we spent about 2 years during the pandemic putting this together. And then last year it came out, and it's been selling pretty good. But it has over 800 images of my work. And here's the really cool thing, because they spent a lot of money on this. I hope I can find it. Here it is. I think this is it. This is the really cool thing. It's a gatefold.
Right.
And this is like, I'm like, you could have just sold that. Blown it up to like a poster size and just like, hey, and people would put it on the wall. And so they spent a great deal of time. Gail Anderson, who is a very famous and well-known graphic designer, designed it. And then they have a couple of essays by academics. So, I have academics talking about my work. I read it and I learned things about myself I didn't know. But it is, again, it is elevating the common poster to another level. Because with one academic wrote about a biographic, what is that the word?
Biographical sketch?
Yeah, biographical sketch of me. The other one actually tried to place me within a continuum of black printing. And that is something that is not discussed in academia. So it was lifting this whole thing. Because I really believe that the discipline of graphic design, the discipline of book art, what we call book arts, needs to have more academic scrutiny. Yes, in the library schools, they talk about the history of the book and how the book is made, but I think that's a little bit different than the people who are actually publishing. And like there should be a whole there should be a course on, book publishing in Toronto and what happened in the 70s here. Because it's remarkable. How did it happen? Why did it happen? And, everyone has theories, but no one has ever sat down and said, let us gather this information, because it's scholarly. And why did it happen here and it didn't happen in other places? Was it the water?
It is a beautiful book. I love the pink foredge, too.
Yeah, and they did an excellent job. It has the exposed spine. And I don't know, I think this may be the latest thing in book publishing, the painted edges, because I hadn't seen it, and then it came, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool, So yeah, this is the book that's about my work. And I must confess, they did an excellent job at printing and reproducing the work. Mm-hmm. And they also made I did a set of cards for them. I think I did 100 sets of 20 cards that they sold, but they also took one of the sets and photographed them and sent them to have them printed offset. And I'm like, maybe this is the way I get rich. I just do one and have it offset and sell it for like $1 a piece, because they are remarkable. They really did an excellent job. Of course it was printed in China. So, but they did an excellent job at reproducing those cards. So that's what this book is. And there are copies, I assume in the public library. Someone said that they read it. Yeah. There's a copy in the public library here, and there's a copy here.
We have 2 copies of it here, actually, but it's non-circulating copies, of course.
Right.
I have the Kelly Library's copy. If you have to wait for me to return it.
Yeah. So it's an excellent book. Yeah. I mean, it's a book about me, but still, it's a great, physically, it's a beautiful thing. It's a thing of beauty. Subject matter,
I think that was highly disputable for that. Thank you for coming. I should mention, by the way, that Amos is going to be, the reason why he's in Toronto right now is because he's going to Oakville tomorrow. He's going to be at the Howard Iron Works Museum. They're having a fair there, I believe, on Saturday. So if you happen to find yourself in the Oakville area, please stop by the Howard Iron Works.
And I will be printing, so you can print a keepsake and take it home with you, provided that you are a responsible adult and you won't put the ink on anyone else.
Right.
Because it'll be wet.
Yeah, it'll be a fun day. So again, thanks everybody for coming. We'll be here lingering for a little while before we close. So chat with Amos, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.